and welcome to the first episode of the 6-Star Business Podcast for 2022. I am your host this year, Aveline Clark, and I am so excited to bring to you the most amazing guests from all over the world who come and are attracted to the notion of what is a 6-star business. Now, this first episode, we have Nicole Davidson from Australia in Melbourne and Jan Cavelle from the UK. Alongside them, I have a special guest co-host. I have Joanne Brooks, and together we had a fabulous conversation. This is the first of many. I hope you enjoy it. The audio for myself is a little bit ordinary, so please just apologies for that. Sit back and listen to it. It is absolutely fantastic. These ladies just nail it out of the park, and I am just really excited to bring this to you. Enjoy.
And so here we are on the next episode of the 6-Star Business Podcast. You're here with me and my co-host Joanne Brooks today, and we've got Nicole and Jan. So lovely to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Yes.
Our pleasure.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So we like to kick things off here on the podcast by asking just a couple of questions to get to know who you are, like our listeners, and we want to get to know you a bit better as well. So could you share with us where you are in the world, who you serve in your work life, how you serve them, and maybe something you like to do when you're not serving everybody else and working. So something you like to do in your spare time. Who wants to kick us off?
I'll kick us off if you like. I'm in the UK. I'm a sort of retired entrepreneur, which means I work very full-time. And I am a writer and author, and I specialise in writing about companies and procedures and all things involved with early scale-up. So sort of we're talking 1 to 10 mil US dollars sort of touch, and I can't translate that fast enough to Australian. But you get the general picture. So something unusual about me, I guess, as we were talking about just now, my family is split between UK and Australia, so I've got a foot in both camps, so it's particularly nice to do this show.
Awesome.
Lovely. And when you're not doing all that amazing busy work, what do you like to do?
I'm very lucky. I live near the sea, so I which I love. I moved back here about 3 years ago, and it just is joyous to me to be able to go down and walk by the seaside. It's restorative and good for the soul.
Yeah.
Totally agree. I know Joanne and I can relate to that.
We're on the sea too.
Yeah, thank you. Nicole, what about yourself?
Well, firstly, I'm an outlier because I don't live by the sea, but I am based in Melbourne, Australia, and I've lived here most of my life, but I've also lived in London and Dubai. In terms of what I do and who I serve, I am a negotiation specialist. So I work mainly with medium-sized companies, and I help them achieve better outcomes through their negotiations. So that's through a blend of training. I do a lot of training work, particularly with sales, procurement, but also internal teams that need to negotiate internally. I do mediation work, so I assist in the resolution of disputes. So that could be contract disputes or business ownership disputes, which is a particular area of interest for me. And I do negotiation consulting, where I actually come in and step through and help business organise their strategy for how they're going to go into the negotiation. In terms of something unusual about me or what I do when I'm not busy doing that, I have 3 children who are 14, 12 and 12. So they keep me plenty busy, and I dabble a little bit in resin art when I'm not busy working. So that's been something that I learnt during COVID and has helped my sanity over the last 2 years.
We all do that.
Yes. What can you explain what resin art is please?
So resin art is where you take resin, which is basically a liquid plastic that then sets into a hard plastic, and you use different colours to create beautiful abstract patterns. So for me, a lot of what I've done is either decorating trays and tabletops with lovely multicoloured patterns, or I've also done quite a bit of jewellery making. So big chunky coloured rings and pendants and things like that.
That sounds lots of fun.
It is
Messy?
good fun.
Bit messy?
Yeah, very, very messy, and very smelly. So you've got to be a bit careful about where you do it and having good ventilation and all sorts of things. It's kind of nasty chemicals, which is a bit sad, but it makes beautiful things.
Interesting. I noticed that you've got twins, and are they boys, girls, both?
They are boy twins with a big sister.
Right. So I also have boy twins. Mine have just turned 11, and Joanne's got the twin thing as well, don't you?
Twin dogs.
Yes.
Yes, who are lurking around here. They've settled now, so we'll be fine.
Yeah.
Well, you would understand the pain and the joy of 12-year-old twins as well then. So I'm a year ahead of you, Aveline. So
Yeah.
It's not a quiet house.
No, I can totally understand that. So, I'm really fascinated to learn about from both of you. What was it that sparked your interest about when you first heard about Six Star Business? What was it, and what brought you to the podcast to discuss it?
I guess if we're going in the same order again, sorry, I nipped in there, Nicole. Very rude. But for me, it was the fact that as I say, I write and I talk to entrepreneurs across the globe all the time about how they're achieving scale, and everybody's looking for magic ingredients that make them successful. And I think the whole concept of having a 6-star business, the one that is above, is what successful scale really is all about in many ways. It is the secret sauce. So I guess that was that for me. And to be honest, because for one reason or another it's been a little while, I cannot remember how on earth we connected originally, and isn't that rude? But it was a long time ago now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. Tell me about the secret sauce. I love that. We all love a secret sauce, don't we? We like to think that there is that little secret. But I've heard that term used before from other guests.
Have you?
And just in general, once or twice. And I'm fascinated to know, how you've seen that play out or show up.
I think there are a lot of ways. I was trying to narrow that down in my mind earlier today when I was thinking, I should really focus on one specific thing, and thinking that's a real struggle because they're so interlinked, a lot of them. I think the secret sauce comes obviously from the founder or founders. They set the tone, and I think they need to be very special in the way they're very open to development. I don't think founders can stay the same because the businesses have to evolve. And I think that's really important. And I think an awful lot of founders don't go into business with a realization that it's going to be such I was going to say severe journey, that's rather unkind, but it's such a revolutionary journey for them as well. So I think that's part of it. I think, it's the old Pete Drucker quote, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think the company's culture makes them stand out tremendously, and people which comes interlinks with the culture, obviously. But I think an awful lot of it, the culture also links into the founder too. So, as I said, it's very difficult to I think, separate out one specific thing. But, and you've got the brand which should really spring from that. It should spring from the founders and the culture and the values and all those things if it's going to be authentic, which is so important it is now. People are not interested in non-authentic brands. So again, ties in. But it's that unique personality that comes from values, from brand, from the people who work there and from the founders that sets the business apart.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice. You've touched on quite a bit there.
I did. I knew I was going to. I'm sorry. I should have now.
No, it's very rich. I love it. I love it.
And Nicole, what about yourself? In terms
so,
of the 6-star.
Yeah, so the 6-star for me, I guess, where that resonates with me is that I am all about trying to deal with some key issues that come up in businesses in a really different way. And for me, that idea of 6-star is also suggesting that you want to go above and beyond and do something different. So, for me, it's particularly around this idea of how we've managed business disputes in the past. And it's, there's some very standard ways of doing that and, processes that people go through that, I just don't believe are the most effective way of dealing with it. And so coming up and doing something a bit different, I think connected in with that idea of 6-star, which is, a bit different from your norm.
I love that. Can I ask a question? What I guess, or an observation, I guess. What I've heard from both of you is that this 6-star piece is actually a doing thing. Like there's a lot of verbs here that I really like, and I do like. I've not heard that saying that you said, Jan, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I've not heard that before, so thank you. I've actually jotted that down. But I also really love how you said brand should spring from the founder, and that's a real doing piece, right? It's an activity that people need to consciously do. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, they've got to set the tone, and it's got to be from the heart if it's gonna ring true with people, and they've got to inspire the rest of everybody. Which again they're only going to do if it comes from the heart. So it's got to be from them.
Yeah, I love it. And Nicole, not being normal, doing things differently. Like, if the resolutions are not working by doing it the normal or standard way, or not getting the outcomes that all parties are seeking, well, you've got to think outside the box, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. Really nice.
Tell me, I'd love to hear more about what you were saying, culture and brand, because I think there's a big connection also with what Nicole said, but I would love to explore that a little bit more in terms of 6-star.
Sure. I mean, I think culture and brand go together. I mean, it's you've got so many disruptive brands emerging. I think tech is so geared to disruption that we've got more than ever before. And, that disruption means that there's so much room to express a real personality in a young business and set yourself apart with a different culture. And again, with the pandemic, we've seen, more flexibility. We've seen more hybrid working. There's lots of new ways of working at culture. I've spoken to some wonderful Australian companies who are, developing tech to develop culture, which fascinates me. And I think if you have a culture that people buy into so much, they're so excited to be with the company that they automatically produce the 6 stars, because they want the company and identify with the company, and they want themselves to belong and do well. And that means the company does well as a result.
I think from what you said, Jan, the things that you do is in putting in procedures and all those sort of things, which is very functional piece in a business, right? And those sort of things. But, you know, the brand and the culture is such a creative, in my mind, it's such a creative space. And they're very at odds, but they're so important to have those things together.
I really agree, Joanne. Actually, I think, you know, now it's much more recognised that the more you can strip out the rules and regulations, the better. You know, we see and know now, of course, that, you know, micromanaging is just so destructive. We see too many rules and regulations are destructive. They make people go against wanting to perform well, you know, and I think you're right. I think there is this slight clash between, you know, old school of and I'll be interested to hear what Nicole says about this. But I think startups are more given now to chucking out too many rules and restrictions, which were perhaps introduced, especially when we got into the very I'm never not going to be able to say that. It's a word I can never say, but lots of litigation around culture that came in, you know, and so everybody tightened up, thinking we've got to protect this, we've got to have rules, regulations, you know, guidelines for everything time we breathe. And people are wising up now that, you know, it's not the way that people like to be. You know, they want their freedom, and a lot of them have found it. And it's one of the things that's come out of lockdown. You know, is people have got used to working at home. For some, that's been a struggle. Some people have loved it, but they've had much more autonomy, and it's one of the reasons they don't want to go back. Is because they don't want to go back to that stifling control thing, and I think we're going to see a lot of change surrounding that.
I think you're right there. I think there's a lot of there's been a lot of challenge to maintaining the culture with people working in different locations with different capabilities of internet and the struggles of all that brings to everybody every day, right?
Absolutely.
But Nicole, please share what you think in regards to what Jan's comment was, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, look, I think, you know, I agree with what Jan said, and this whole idea about, you know, even how we get back. I mean, where I focus in this sort of space is around that development of collaboration within organisations. And this is where there's a lot of skill levels missing in that space, because I think people are so used to, you know, and you've got all these entrepreneurs that might be experienced but have come through that old corporate structure and might not be used to it, or you've got perhaps some of the millennials who've never had that and are fighting. So you've got this sort of clash of cultures anyway in some of these organisations. But where I end up focusing with people, and it doesn't really matter whether it's in this sort of culture space or whether it's actual business disputes, we all have to get better at actually listening to people. We need to listen to really understand and figure out how we work together rather than pushing our own agenda 100%. And for me, that's the absolute crux of all of this, is if we actually can be better at listening, be better at asking the right kinds of questions, then we will get much better outcomes. And, you know, as I said, that's a huge piece of what I do when I'm working with people, is just really help them with that process of listening and asking questions. It sounds really basic, and it's so incredibly difficult.
I don't think it sounds basic at all. I mean, you know, you've got, I used to train a lot of salespeople, you know, and they'd always ask me, you know, what's the most important skill in sales? And I'd say listening. And they'd go, what? You know, but they didn't get it, you know. Nobody rates listening where it should be, which is right up here.
Yeah. Well, and it becomes even more difficult when you add in generational impacts, where you've got, you know, a lot of younger generation now who don't actually want to pick up a phone and talk to somebody. It's all done via text messaging and emails. And, you know, that the lack of communication because of miscommunication through writing is absolutely massive. So, you know, technology is great because it has allowed us to do things a lot more fluidly. It's allowed us to do things differently. But to the extent that we're now relying on email rather than talking to people, there's a massive loss of communication. There's a loss of culture within organisations. You can hide in the organisation much more easily. And that's something that is, you know, having an ongoing impact. But I think also coming back to what Jan was saying about, the flexibility that we've experienced, I think one of the big challenges for businesses in the next 6 to 12 months will be, how do you manage this demand from people for that ongoing flexibility? Because while it's great for the individual, it doesn't necessarily do good things for collaboration within the organisation. I think that's a big challenge for people to really figure out how they manage that as we come out of lockdown into normal.
Are you hit, in my UK ignorance, are you hit by the Great Resignation in Australia yet?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and look, I mean, my experience in that space is certainly in specific industries. So, I do a lot of work with accountants and lawyers, and, we're seeing not only the Great Resignation, but the great salary increase for the people who are then trying to recruit. And so, we're seeing, I heard of a case recently where a junior lawyer who'd been on 100,000 a year was poached by a larger firm for 150. 50% increase in salaries. Now, I think that's going to be creating challenges as well, because while it might make sense in the short term, while there is a skills shortage, what do you do with these people in a couple of years where that rights itself and you've got these people on hugely inflated salaries? Wait and see.
It's tricky.
So what have you seen, Jan, in the Great Resignation in the UK?
I don't think it's as bad here yet, she says. As it's nothing as bad as the States. But because we've only just coming out of I can't think of the word, furlough, and support. So everybody's sort of fairly maintained the status quo, I think, till recently. And I think it's going to be very different. But on the other hand, the UK hasn't fully made up its mind to whether to come out of lockdown or not. There's still talk we might be in it tomorrow all the time. So, who knows over here?
Yeah.
Don't draw me on that one.
Yeah. I'm curious. I know our research in the business that I operate, the consequence of the Great Resignation is there's also a wave of people starting business. And I'm keen to hear your thoughts about, well, how do these new businesses make sure they're 6-star? I think that, anyway, keen to hear what you think.
Shall I go again?
Jan.
Oh gosh, I think some of them, I don't think they can leap to 6-star. I think there are some who have been planning it a long while, or have been doing it as a side hustle and got a feel of what they're doing. They might be able to create that from day one. I can think of a particular business over here that, that I know of that had to virtually close down for the first year during the pandemic, and is now blown up again and is taking the world by storm. I think they're already at Series A, which is just crazy. But they know their stuff. They had that first year experience. They went through everything and hell and back, as well, and must have learned some very horrible, hard lessons. But in a way, it was a practice run for them. Now, they can probably pull it off. It seems they're putting it off quite nicely, actually. But, for these people who actually have just sort of stamped their foot and jumped ship, it's going to be a steep learning curve at best, and I don't think they're going to get 6-star straight off, to be honest.
I think certainly from...
Sorry.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think certainly from my experience, and one of the things I've been doing through the pandemic is we have a Victorian Small Business Commission that deals with disputes between small businesses. And, one of the things that I've repeatedly seen is people who've got into business because either they've jumped for the pandemic, a lot of these were pre-pandemic as well, but they've gone in without any of the background knowledge on how to run a business. So they know their stuff, they know their industry, and they've got passion, But there's so many people going into business because I think they just don't realise how difficult it is. And I think that's going to be the big challenge that we see over, another challenge in the next couple of years is how do these businesses actually survive where they've jumped in without all of that background, and people without access to the resources that they need to make their business 4-star, let alone 6-star.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of them are in for a rough time.
Hard road.
Any doubt about that.
Yeah, indeed.
But then startups are always in for a rough time.
It's business, right? It's business. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indeed.
It's a learning curve in your life. That's a good wake up call. I mean, I knew nothing about business when I went into it and started one. Absolutely zero. So it's doable in your own fashion.
Indeed. So what we're going to see is a wave of businesses that are going to be new and they're going to struggle. So how can we help them to work towards being 6-star? What are the things that we could do as a 6-star?
I think 99% of it they have to find out for themselves. And I know that's probably contrary to what a lot of people would say. But I honestly, I've had and seen, certainly in the UK, the sort of average advisor has never been near a business. They don't know what they're doing, and it's deeply depressing that these people are sent out to advise anybody. And like I say, your business best. There are one or two people about who are good, but it's a dangerous game. And actually, there's no substitute for experience. You'll find out what can make a difference with your business, and it's your business. It's got to be your unique business. That's what's going to make it 6-star.
Mm-hmm. Cool. And Nicole?
Yeah, look, I think I'd echo those sentiments about, I think people will need support and they should go out and look for that support, but they've got to be very careful where they get it from. And, the number of business coaches, business advisors that are out there, and, I want to actually know if I've got a business coach or advisor, what have they done that's been successful? And, I've seen a number of them that actually go, I did this and it failed, and so now I'm taking my learnings to share with other people. Well, that's okay, but I'd kind of rather see that you'd had a success as well as learning from failures. So I think being really careful about where they spend their money to get advice is a really important thing. But I think they do need to go out and get that advice. Don't just do it on your own. Find somebody really trustworthy and reliable to guide you through, who can really open, once again, I think it's about knowing what are the right questions to ask. What is it that I don't know that is going to make the difference to me being successful? And finding somebody who can help you think about those questions is probably the number one thing to go out and look for.
I think that's one of the good things about having more than one person to go to, because somebody who's expert at one thing may be absolutely useless at something else, and that's of course another danger with all the advisors. They might even have a strength, but whether it's a strength that actually is any use to you is a different matter. And I'm a huge fan of finding yourself a mentor if you possibly can, who's actually in your sector, who's as Nicole rightly says, has actually done it and is further down the line than you are in that sector. I was watching, what was I watching earlier? I'm sure it was earlier today, sometime this week, it's already below, but who was saying that, they wanted to go into making toffee pecan ice cream, and they had to travel to the other side of Britain to find a toffee pecan ice cream maker who could actually tell them more about it, But that trip would probably have more value than talking to a general business advisor who once held a junior position in a bank,
Yeah.
I think mentors are great, and even very busy entrepreneurs are usually extremely nice and generous. And if you ask them a condensed question and don't take up all their time, they'll usually come back with something helpful and constructive and extremely valuable.
I wonder if there's a layer that sits under that, though, because you're talking about business owners, new business owners who are potentially aware that they should be asking questions and surrounding themselves with mentors and people. Do you feel that there's an audience out there that actually, and this is an ego thing, I think, as well, and a bravado piece as well, or head in the sand type piece, that there's a lot of new business owners out there that simply don't know that they should be asking? I'll do it. She'll be right, mate. Is a very big Australian thing. That is for sure. Do you think that that's a thing?
I think so. It's certainly over here. It may not be the same. I don't know. Maybe it's a cultural thing. I think there's a degree of it over here, but I think it tends to be a big cover-up of massive inferiority, terror, imposter, and all of them underneath that sort of actually stops people. And that's something that, again, they have to work out, It won't necessarily be the case that if a coach goes in, that they'll actually open up and say they don't know. They'll sort of sit there making, well, that's fine, I'm under control, thank you, sort of noises. It's something they have to come to terms with themselves, that they, it goes back to what I was saying about the journey of their own self-development. And I think, that's the one they have to come to terms with, and they have to be perhaps, secure enough or get secure enough to be able to say, I don't know, to be able to say, I need to change, I need to develop. And that's a battle for a lot of people.
Nicole?
No, I think that's true. And, I think there's possibly some gender overlays on that as well. I think, certainly my experience is that women are much more open to talking about the challenges that they're facing and seeking out that support and guidance, and probably naturally find their crew a little bit easier. I think that can be more challenging for men starting up a business. So that would be, one of the complexities that come into it, I think. And, certainly my experience, I've been running my own business for 5 years now, and I've come into it from consulting experience where I've been particularly doing advice around insolvency. So you've got an idea of what makes for a successful business in terms of managing the finances, but there are others, other sections of the business where I will tap into the various networks, a lot of online networks and things, which are really great sources of information sometimes, as long as you can sift through the advice that is rubbish. And once again, I think for a small business, and I'm part of a number of networking groups and support groups on Facebook and LinkedIn, and people will go there for advice, and they will have some pretty significant questions, things about their tax liabilities, or things about, I'm not going to employ someone, what do I do about this? Or I'm thinking about investing in this, what do I do? And everyone comes in with their opinion. And you go, are any of you actually qualified? So
with credibility.
I think, that idea about really being careful about where are you getting your advice from is so important. I've seen some terrible advice on those forums.
Shocking,
that just jump in and go, don't do it, go and speak to an expert.
I know. Facebook business groups are absolutely the worst,
Yeah, you're right. The credibility, you can't quality check that, right?
Yeah.
So there's a question here. What's the biggest barrier to a business reaching 6-star? And, is that an internal battle that you mentioned, Jan?
I think to some extent, I guess I think it is. I don't think it's something that can be superimposed from the outside. I think it's got to come from the heart of the business for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And Nicole, what's your stance on that?
It's a good question. It's probably not something I've turned my mind to that much, but I think a lot of it is possibly to do with just not looking at the bigger picture. And I think, you've got to put every business into its context and really look at, where's it coming from, where does it want to go, and what else is around that. So I think if you take too much of a narrow view of the business and what you're doing and where you're headed, that's going to prevent you from getting to that sort of 6-star level. So I think, just being really mindful to keep the view quite broad, and see where you're going.
I'd be keen to, I know I have my thoughts on this. Business owners start businesses, and they often haven't tapped into what's their bigger goal, what's their why, what's their purpose. How do you feel how that connects a business owner to reaching 6-star?
I think yes, do I think it's important, and do I think passion's important? Yes, I do. But I think it's quite tricky. I think it's become overworked. For some of us, we might have different passions. I mean, you look at the volume of single parents, for example, who start businesses, and they're doing it to feed their kids,
Absolutely.
and that they want that business to do well, but their driving force is putting food on the table for their children with the best will in the world, so, and that immediately would be, to talk down, oh, your business hasn't got a good enough why, and I think that is a little bit difficult, to be confused. I think you certainly have to have a driving reason that you want the business to do well. And if it comes from a passion to have an impact that's outside of your direct circle, it could be for bettering the planet, or it could be for your team, or whatever, then that's going to be another huge driver for you. And I think that's fantastic. That will take you up a level. But not everybody has that, and that's okay. And I think that ought to be said in capital letters, that's okay. You can still create a good business if you're determined to, and it's for a different reason.
Yeah. And Nicole?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think coming in to know why you're doing it, and I guess there's a whole range of reasons, and it doesn't necessarily need to be that big reason of changing the planet. It could just be that as Jan said, it's about feeding the kids or whatever. But I think I've totally lost my track of thought.
That's cool. My comment was around business owners being able to tap into why they've started it, their purpose. It could be, as you say, Jan, having the kids being proud of you and putting good food on the table for them, giving them a great lifestyle. That could be a motivator to ensure that the business is successful. And was just your thoughts on that.
Well, I think what I'd say about that too is that why and the motivation changes over time. I mean, certainly for me, I started my business because I was dissatisfied with where I was, and I was limited in how I could offer my services. So I came into my business from a training consultancy where all I did was the teaching side of what I now do. And I really wanted to be teaching and doing. So my motivation to come in was purely about giving myself that scope to do both and to have the flexibility of working for myself. And so flexibility was a key driver for me. But as time has gone, the motivation has changed, and, coming from a fairly personal why, I now have a much broader why, because my why is I actually want to move the system. I want to change the way disputes are done. And there's this real sort of, growing why of why it's important for me to be doing this. So, I think that idea about having to, watch your Simon Sinek and find your why it's great, but it's a work in process as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with you.
And I think the other thing to sort of chuck it right out is the idea that it's to make money, because, yes, money is part of what people do it for, and they enjoy the freedom that money can bring. That may be freedom to bring up your kids, or it may be freedom to jet around the world. But money per se never is enough why to push a business forward. No. On its own, it won't get you out of bed.
Yeah, I agree. So as we come to a close, if you could each of you share with the audience who's going to be listening to this, one key takeaway or piece of advice, what would that be, Jan?
Oh, wow. Do it because you love it. And that may be because you love what you're creating for your family or for your business or the world, but only ever do it because you love it.
Nice. Nicole?
My key advice would be always assume you don't know everything. Always leave room for doubt.
Nice. Awesome.
Yeah, that is awesome.
It's been a goodie.
Awesome. So, Jan and Nicole, look, it's been an absolute delight to have you on the 6 Star podcast. I've enjoyed being a co-host for the first time, so thank you for the invite, Evelyn. I really trust that you got a lot out of it. And there's a whole bunch of other great conversations on the 6 Star podcast, so go and check them out. But as Evelyn said, this is a conversation that could just go on for hours. I feel it's been a really lovely, natural conversation. So very much appreciate you ladies giving us some time this evening for you, Jan. Trust it's not too late. And thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
For me, my pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. We're both agreed on that. Thank you both.
Lovely. Thank you.